What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and today we're going to be going over a stage selection screen for our Super Smash Brothers game. So we have character select, we have the coin that works, and you can change your character skin, and that's good to go. But when we hit continue, we're just starting the stage. We're now going to add a stage selection screen where we can grab our coin again and place it over our map, or our stage, and then when we hit continue, we then load into the corresponding stage. Simple enough. In theory, I would very much recommend that you watch the character select screen episodes before watching this, simply because there were 3 episodes on character select screen and all that logic is being put into the stage selection screen. And to be honest, I'm not going to be covering everything in the stage selection screen, simply because I'm actually going to duplicate the character select screen and then use it from there, changing names as we go. So it's not really necessary to cover everything again. It will pretty much all get covered in the character select screen except for the new things that we add today. So I'll leave a link in the icon in the top right corner right here that has the first episode of the character select screen. I think it's very important to check that one out. If you're interested in watching the whole series from the beginning, I think we're about 13 episodes along, so you're missing out on quite a bit, but obviously it's not mandatory for this episode. You just need to see the character select screen logic. But if you'd like, I'll show you the first episode of the Super Smash Brothers Unreal Engine tutorial series right here. Okay, so let's get into it today by going into where our widgets are, specifically our character select screen. Right click on it and duplicate it. And then you can make the stage select screen. Now, the stage select screen, again, is going to be an entire copy now that you've duplicated it. But there's still plenty we have to change. It's not nearly that simple. First of all, on the stage select screen, I mean, you can have as many players as you want. I'm going to have the functionality to where player 1 or a random player can be set to be the one who determines the stage. So I have no problem using random or even multiple players, but as with the fighting game tutorial, I prefer stage select to be controlled by one player. And, you know, it can alternate and things like that, but I don't think you need more than one player on the menu at a time, or at least more than one player on the menu at a time that actually can control the menu. So we're going to focus on doing it with one player today, and we're going to make a few changes to make our lives just a little bit easier. So first of all, we were getting this bug when we were closing the window that was giving warnings, and I want to address this sooner rather than later. A lot of times I try and save the bug fixes until the ends, but this is kind of important because it will change some of the functionality that goes on within the widgets as well. So what I was initially doing was setting user focus to the window, and that was working, and we kind of needed to do that for something that we were doing. It's not really important what, but we're going to change this now to set input mode game in UI where set focus was on the character select screen. And I guess I probably should have said to do this before duplicating, but it's only 3 nodes that you have to change. So before we were calling set focus, specifically set user focus like this, and dragging in the player controller and self like that. But we no longer want to use the set user focus node, so you can keep player controller 0 and self, but call set input mode and game and UI. So like game and UI, you could technically do game or UI and make it work, but game and UI is good because essentially it checks to see if there is UI that can respond to player input, and then it will act as a player controller if there's not. So it's kind of like it's the most complex, but it kind of gives you the most amount of functionality. And then all you have to do is drag in self to the in widget to focus and the player controller to player controller. I do not hide cursor during capture because I want to see our little glove that we have, our little master hand, essentially, that we've got going on right here, right? So that will fix your warnings. So do this for both the character select and the stage select if you haven't already. And then the rest of the logic is going to stay the same. Again, we're going to add more and we're going to change some names so that we don't see characters where it should be stages. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So in begin play, at the end of begin play, actually, or at the end of construct, I mean, then I've removed some stuff that's not necessary. So in the character select screen, I was spawning some characters to enable or disable keyboard mode, which is good. It should stay in the character select. But as far as the stage select screen, we no longer need to do any of this. We don't need to get the player controllers that are there, set the number of players in the game, or add players to the game. We don't need to do any of that. So just go to your stage select screen, go right after show mouse cursor, and get rid of all that. It'll actually cause problems if you leave it in, and so it is important that you get rid of it. Then, I'm using the same button to grab the coin, so you don't have to change anything with listen for input action. And then we grab the coin, which determines who has the coin, if it's player 1, if they have the coin or not, what asset to choose and show to the screen, and then where it's at, if it's visible or not. And then we go to determine coin placement, and this is where the changes start coming into play. So in determine coin placement in the character select screen, what we do is we call this function, and it determines what character we're on. So it determines what class to set our players to. So player 0 is being set to this character class, meaning player 0 is essentially player 1. In code, zeros are often the first index. So player 0 is player 1. If there's 2 players, player 1 can be Mario, player 2 can be Luigi. That's what we're doing here. We're determining what character the player put their coin on, and then setting them to be that character when they load into the game. In the stage select screen, we have to do something different. We have to determine what stage they put the coin on, and then we have to load into that stage when we're in the game. So to do this, we need to actually change our determine coin placement function. It can still be called determine coin placement because there's actually nothing wrong with this function. And the logic inside of it, all the ones that determine where we're at, whether we're on like the first or second icon, that's going to stay the same too. But we have to change the names of the buttons to be stage 1 and stage 2 as opposed to character 1 and character 2. And then we also have to change what they return. They're going to return something called an E stage for enum stage. So in character select, they return something called a E character class, which is in code. It's not important. We're not going to be touching the code today. But it's, again, your Mario, Luigi, Bowser. That's what I'm calling class here. So in stage select, we need to change that for something called E stage. You won't have that yet. We need to make it. And I've made it here. But I put it in, it doesn't matter where you put it. I believe I put it in logic. Yep. You can right click, and like you're going to add new. So either add new or hit right click. I'm going to right click. And then you can go to blueprints, enumeration, right here. And this will make a blueprint enum for you. So just an enum that you can access in blueprint. And essentially an enum is just a value that it's mapped. So the order that it's in is important. And the order that you choose, like if I choose the default map of this enum, then I'm going to perform logic on it. In this case, I'm going to load the default map. Otherwise, I'm going to load the training room. So that's all the enum is doing here. And that's essentially all enums really do. So if you're not familiar with them, don't worry. It's not really going to throw anything out the window. Just trying to tell you. The display name is what it displays, so what we're going to choose in the stage select here. See, default map or training room. You also have this description, which is just useful for kind of explaining what it is. If you're doing it yourself, it might not be that important to fill this out. You don't have to fill this out. It's optional. But I went ahead and filled it out so you guys could see it. Stage 1, default map. Stage 2, training room. And then you can have an enum description, which when you hover over the enum asset will say this. This enum determines what stage is currently selected / being played on. So now on your return nodes in your stage select, you can click on the E character class and type E stage, and you'll see it pop up here and select that. Then just compile and save. If you get something called hot reload error, capital HOT reload, then you need to close the editor and then open it back up, compile and save, and hopefully it's gone. It's just an issue with changing structures and changing enums around while the editor is open. So it can cause some issues sometimes, but you haven't necessarily done anything wrong. In fact, you haven't done anything wrong. Now you just select the one that you want. So the way that this logic works, this determine coin placement, is it actually looks at the button's location and determines if the coin is over it. So stage 1 button, stage 2 button. Again, in the character select, these are called character 1 and character 2 buttons. Character 1 and character 2 buttons are these buttons. The buttons where we want to put our coin to select that. So in the design view of the stage select, I've now changed the images to be of the default map icons. And I've also changed their names. So instead of character 1 and character 2, I have stage 1 button, stage 2 button, and then the image. So the button actually is behind the image. If I hide the image, it's just gray back here. Okay, so the button is what we actually are checking the location of. The image is just what's being displayed. So I've kept both of those, but I've gone ahead and made the button is the same size and all, and the image I've gone ahead and changed to be the stages. And then lastly, instead of using all these, like I have this player 1 character image, button, all these are, I've converted it to one button and image. So there's a button because, well, there's a button on the characters because you can click on the characters in the game to change their skin. On the stage, we can't do it yet, but I do have a button here, and it's going to change from the regular stage to the Omega version of the stage, which is basically like where all things are like Battlefield in Super Smash Brothers. So I still left the button there, but I've changed it to be one stage, one button, or one image, one button. So I've called it selected stage button, selected stage image. Okay, you can move them wherever you like. That's easy enough. One more thing in the design view. So the way I'm actually handling these brushes and what displays on the screen, sure, in the appearance, I'm going ahead and setting the map icon here, but these are actually mapped to a specific value. So they are mapped to values that we have as variables. And what I mean by that, you see that this image, character 1 image, is, if you go to appearance brush, you can see it says character 1 icon. So if I go to, if I could find it, character 1 icon right here, it is a slate brush and it has an image. This is so that I can just change this image instead of changing the design view, and it can also change here. And more importantly, we can also use that later in the scene. So if they change their color or something like that, we can change their slate brush. We don't have to change everything on the UI, and we can actually get the functionality that we want. So I'd recommend keeping that in the stage select, which I've done, but I've gone and changed my character 1 and character 2 icons to stage 1 and stage 2 icon. You can see I put default map icon and training room icon. And all I've done to get those is literally take pictures of my editor and post them in. Okay, so any pictures you take, like PNGs or whatever, you can go ahead and add them. It will come in as a texture if you go ahead and import the image. Let's get rid of that. And next up on the list, we're gonna switch these out. So I already told you to rename them. So if you rename them, they will adjust automatically in here. Make sure you set the proper enum. For my first button, it's default map. For my second, it's the room I'm calling training room. Now, there's two other functions in here. Change stage type and determine stage type. I have them open. I actually haven't changed anything with them because we're not going to use them until we get to the Omega stage. So feel free to change the name of these two functions that came over from the character select screen, but we're not going to use them today. So you can change them and just leave them there. We're not even going to call them right now. Anyway, now that we have our enum set up and determine coin placement is working, our determine coin placement also needs to be changed to use the E stage enum. Otherwise you will get errors. Then we're going to use the value here, save it out to determine what our selected stage is, and then open that map when we hit continue. So drag off of your return node of your determine coin placement and hit promote to variable. And I called mine current stage selection. Then you can drag off of that and do a switch on E stage. And then depending on the stage it is, we set the appropriate brush. So for example, if it's the default map, or if it's the training room, we do different logic. If it's the default map, then we're going to set the brush of the selected stage image, which is this guy right here. So we're going to set what this looks like to be the stage 1 icons get 0. So the reason I have icon and icons in both the character select and the stage select seems a little weird, but the reason we have this, and I'll actually I'll go ahead and say rename this right here so you guys can see, so there's no confusion. I don't like to cut and then things are changed, otherwise it can very easily lead to confusion. Let's change these to be selected icons like it is in the character select. The reason I have selected icons as opposed to just the regular icon here, so the regular icon goes on the screen, right? That's this character or this stage. But if I'm to click this button and switch it to the Omega version, I want this image to change to represent that. It should be the Omega version. I don't need this image to change to be that. So it's just a little easier way to keep track of it. It's not really necessary, but I like doing it better that way. And then if it's the training room, we use stage 2 selected icons, which it's got the training room in it. So just make sure you're covering all your bases and you're changing all your character select stuff to stage select stuff. And then you can remove, I have a bunch of, in my character select, I have a bunch of things down here that go ahead and determine your character skin, which is you click on it and it changes. Again, we'll be handling that when we handle the Omega stages, which we're definitely not to yet. So you can go ahead and remove all of the presses of the buttons that aren't there anymore, and all the ones that call determine character skin, they're unnecessary. You can see I have one here for my selected stage button, which again is the button right underneath this guy. And here's where we'll do the logic to go to the Omega stage, but we're not there yet, so I just left it disconnected. The last set of logic we have to do is open the level. But before we do that, let's do some cleanup on the character select screen. So before, we were going straight to the character select screen, and when we hit the continue button, we would go into the level. We obviously need to change that now to where we can open up the stage select screen we just made and actually edit it. So to do that, on pressed for your continue button, which you should already have, we're going to go ahead and create our stage select screen widget. So you just go create widget. Whoops, you could spell it correctly. And then you can choose your stage selection screen. And then you can add it to the viewport. Oops, sorry. And then you can set the visibility of this screen. Say target as self. So if I just type set visibility, don't drag anything into it, then it'll set the character select screen to be hidden. And you won't be able to see the character select. Now, there are issues that can come up if you're not using a mouse, but instead you start using controller inputs for this, and we'll cover them when we get there, so no worries. But I just want to warn you, if you start trying to use controller inputs or even just the keyboard inputs as opposed to the mouse, then you could run into some problems. It'll be with just setting it to be invisible instead of setting it to be like inactive or removing it. But there you go. So this will now, instead of opening the level, will now set up the stage selection screen, add it to the viewport so we can edit it, and then hide the character select screen. Then, in the stage select screen, we still have the continue button. It came over as well. So if you need it, go ahead and click on your continue button, and then hit on pressed right here. Then in the logic, all I do is I grab the enum variable we set, get stage selection, current stage selection, drag off of it and type switch, and then load the appropriate level off of my switch. If it's default map, I load side scroller example map. If it's training room, I open training room. If you don't know, you can always just go to your stage and look. So for example, levels, mine is called training room, and the side scroller example map is actually in side scroller CPP maps. So there, when you hit continue, you'll load the appropriate level. Now there is one more thing we need to do, and that is we actually had some stuff happening in the level blueprint of our side scroller example map, and now that we're adding new maps, we kind of need to adjust that. So this is going to be changed over to the game mode soon, so don't worry, don't go crazy. You don't have to add this to 1,000 different things or worry about how this is going to grow. We're going to use it now, and then shortly we'll change this over to a more efficient method. But for now, it's good. So in our level blueprint, we were creating our character HUD, and then actually possessing the camera that we placed in the scene, called our default camera, as opposed to using our pawns camera. So if you want to go ahead and do that, you can just copy this stuff in your side scroller example map, And if you don't have this from one of my earlier episodes, you can look at it. It's relatively simple to get. Like, you just create widget, add to viewport, make sure you select your character HUD as the widget, get player controller 0, drag off of that and type set view target with blend, and then you need the new view target. Sometimes default camera will show up here, like it'll try and find different actors within the scene. But if for whatever reason it doesn't, you can actually still make it work. Just go to your world outliner here, type in camera, and then you can actually drag your camera into a blueprint like this and get it. And then just set that to be your new view target. But copy all this. This is all on begin play. Close this. I'm going to go to my training room level. And I'm going to open that level blueprint. And I'm going to paste it right here. You can keep everything exactly the same. And once you've done that, you're good to go. Now, as for how I made this stage, I also duplicated the side-scroller example map, which was the first map that you saw, and I just changed the materials. So you can literally click on anything around the map, and you see where it says materials. You can select the drop-down and just make it whatever you want. So if I want this block to be... let's make it... the door material, and there you go. You can change it to be the door material. And that's how you can change the stage around like I have. And then when you're ready, just return to your main menu and you can get back to it. Well guys, that's it. That's how you can make your stage selection screen in your Super Smash Brothers game and actually keep the data transferring between it for what you select and what you do, which is really important and makes the game feel a lot more like a game. So I'm glad we knocked this episode out, opened up our possibilities. If it helped you, please subscribe. It does more for the channel than anything else you can do, and I just really appreciate it. I'm going to give a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters and my YouTube membership supporters. Thank you guys so much for believing in the channel, for helping me make these videos week after week. I really appreciate it. If you would like to become a supporter on either of those, you get perks. I'll let you read the perks, but they're in both the... you can click the little join button to figure out what they are and read through them. Or you can click this link to go to Patreon in the description. If you had any issues with this video or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord. There's a link in the description, and we'll be able to help you out with any problems you had or anything you didn't understand. I'll explain it in a little bit more depth. Lastly, guys, if you want to come support us on Twitch, we've been playing Demon Souls lately, and we're going to take a break for the holiday, but when we come back, we need more game ideas for what we should play next. So feel free to let me know. We'll be finishing up Demon Souls. Not too many episodes from here. I feel like we're doing quite well, so if you want to come check that out, twitch.tv/Shawnthebro27. And if not, guys, have a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.